What's up, everybody? Jay Miller here, bringing another Productivity in Tech podcast. And this week I have John Knox on the line. John is an iOS developer for Prevent Biometrics, which is a company that I had not heard of until we got onto the conversation. But they are doing something awesome, helping football players and other athletes that have a lot of collisions, helping detect CTE through creating mouthpieces that measure that trauma as it's happening in real time. But we don't talk too much about that. If you may remember last week, we talked to Mike Young. Mike was an indie developer, or I guess an indie founder who was creating a startup in the Indianapolis area. Well, Mike went from the tech hub that is Austin, Texas, to a not so tech hub of Minneapolis, Minnesota. And you hear that, Minnesota? And he did that, which is interesting because most people don't, you don't go from tech hub to non-tech hub unless you have to. But he has an interesting story about how he was able to land the job that he landed. And he has also been taking the time, because of the story, to help other people get jobs through his Twitter account, Hire an iOS Dev, and also helping to share other jobs that are open. And we talk for a little bit about what both companies and candidates can do to improve their chances of getting that job offering or hiring the right person for the job. Now, I'm going to challenge you. If you believe that we say we missed something in this conversation, I want to know. You can reach out to me on Twitter at prod_in_tech. And if you do that, I will send you a copy of the after show for free. Normally, you'd have to go to our Ko-Fi page in order to do that, or you'd have to become a member. But if you reach out to me and say, hey, here is another thing that developers or hiring developers can do to land successful job offerings, then I will give that to you for free. I will also want to sit down and talk with you a lot, so be ready for that. But I'm not going to take up any more of your time. Let's get into the conversation. Here it is with John Knox. I'm here today with John Knox. John, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm excited to be here.
So John and I met on Twitter a few weeks ago, and we were talking about the idea of sharing, hiring statuses. And, you always see companies on Twitter promoting that they're hiring and looking for people. And John has an awesome project that he has going on, trying to help get people hired and help reveal some of this information. But in talking, we actually found out how he became so ingrained in that. So without any further ado, I'm going to let John introduce himself, tell us what he does, and then we're going to jump into that conversation about how he actually got into the position that he's into today. So John, please let everybody know what you do and what you're all about.
Sure. So my day job, is that I am an iOS developer at a small company, a startup that makes software and hardware that measures head impacts. Basically, it's a mouth guard that measures what happens to your head when you're playing football or hockey or some other contact sport. And then that data is transferred by an iPhone app up to the cloud. And also you can, of course, view the information on the iPad or iPhone and more or less real time.
CTE has been kind of a big topic, especially in the American football world. So to hear that there is not just helmet designers that are measuring these things, but also people measuring it through mouthpieces and things like that I didn't even know that was physically possible. So I have a million questions about that, but even in talking, you mentioned we can't really talk much about it because the company is still building the product, right?
Yeah, that's right. We've we've basically been doing a pilot of the technology and kind of tweaking it and revising the product. And yeah, so it's still under development, but it's been a really fun place to work. I've been there since May of 2018.
So, how do you? I mean, because we were talking about this. How do like when Microsoft, they're going to be hiring. They're always hiring. Apple's always hiring. Amazon's always hiring. These big tech companies in Washington and San Francisco and New York. It's like it's easy to see when they're hiring. Like their like career page always has like 37 entries in it. How do you find the small startup that's working on building a product like Prevent Biometrics?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And that kind of ties into one of my side projects, which is mostly concentrated in a Twitter account called Hire an App Dev, which is kind of like career news for iOS developers. So I try to have a bunch of information about how to get a job, how to get a raise, how to interview at companies, how to interview other developers. So you make sure you bring somebody good onto your team. Um, all sorts of interesting information like that. And so, yeah, so very recently I had this experience, like you say, of actually trying to find a new job, specifically so I can move from Austin, Texas, up here to Minneapolis.
So you went from Austin, Texas, which some people can like. I would look at Austin as like a tech hub, and so you went from where there were jobs aplenty to Minneapolis, where I mean, I don't know, are there plenty of tech jobs available there? Like, did you like literally just pull or pick one out of a hat and go, I'm going to work here, or I mean, how was that hunt?
Oh man. So yeah, on the surface of it, people don't really think of Minneapolis as being a tech hub compared to Austin, but there are quite a few tech jobs if you dig deeper. Maybe not as many as Austin. I'm not sure I can quite quantify that, but there are startups here, and there's some big companies that deal in technology. Companies like Best Buy and Target are headquartered here. There's also Medtronic. So there's a bunch of interesting uh, larger companies here that, of course, do all sorts of stuff with technology and apps, which is, I basically specialize in iOS development, iPhone, iPad apps. So there is stuff here. The process was challenging though because I didn't really have many connections up here. I had, I knew a few people, but not a whole lot in the iOS space.
I mean, I wouldn't even know where to start. Like, if I was moving across, like, cross country, like, I mean, Austin to Minneapolis isn't like a 5 hour drive.
It's a yeah, it's a pretty arduous drive. It's kind of funny though. You can basically, if you wanted to, it's not efficient. If you wanted to, you could take I-35 all the way up from Austin, Texas, to Minneapolis, which is kind of amazing. It'd probably take you 20 hours. But yeah, it was a tough process. It was actually pretty grueling. I applied at a lot of different companies, and I got an awful lot of silence from a lot of these companies, which is always awful and a miserable experience.
Do you think that that was because you were in Austin, or and they were like, oh, there's no way this person's moving, or like why would you think the silence?
I think silence because it's pretty typical for companies to have kind of a crummy experience when you're trying to apply for the job and you don't know somebody there. Like I said, I knew a few people at different companies, and I did get interviews that way. Um, but most of the companies I didn't. So I was basically going through the uh, the website, through the front door, looking at their job listings, and then going through the arduous process of copying and pasting from my resume into a stupid web form and hitting submit, and then never hearing back again necessarily. Sometimes I did, but uh, it was it was brutal.
No, I absolutely bet that that would be a little disheartening, even, especially because for you, it's like you're like I need to make this move. I want to make this move. And I mean, were you already up there before the process, or were you still in Austin, like looking for work and then also trying to get hired? Like were you looking for work and also like looking for an apartment or a house or whatever? And or was it like I'm already here and now I have to make a life happen?
It was more that I was still in Austin. I was coming back and forth to my partner Jenny had already moved up here for an opportunity, and I was going back and forth and attempting to make it work, kind of working remotely at my job in Austin, but that just wasn't really working out too well. I thought it was going okay, but my employer didn't care for it, so it was pretty clear that I would have to find something up in Minneapolis, so I could basically uh, make the move, live permanently, and stop going back and forth between the two cities.
And you were successfully able to do that. So that's kind of where I want to turn it to the kind of the second part of this conversation, which is how do people effectively do this? Like, how do you do this successfully? Because we've talked to people who are hiring in kind of the not rural but the non Silicon Valley areas, and I mean it's hard enough as it is when you're a business out there, but I can't even imagine the person that grew up in St. Paul or Minneapolis, or for me, like Knoxville, Tennessee, who are like, yeah, I'm gonna get a job as a developer, and they think about, I want my family to, I want to be near family, I want to be near loved ones, I don't want to have to pack up and move out to a place that's three times the cost of living of where I am now. Like, what are some of the things that you notice as you are actively helping people find jobs that developers can do to greater their chances of getting hired, even if it means not going to Silicon Valley?
Yeah, so it's funny because in retrospect, I just did this, and I love talking about hiring and how to interview and all this stuff. But in retrospect, I probably could have done a better job because maybe in retrospect, I shouldn't have spent so much time going through the front door, filling out applications online. Because realistically, I should have kind of expected that that's not going to have necessarily the ideal results. It's far easier if you can find somebody who can introduce you to somebody who's already in one of these businesses, and make a personal connection. Talk with somebody on the team that's hiring. If you can do that, then that really improves your chances of actually getting on the phone with the hiring manager and getting to whatever the next step is. Knowing somebody helps so much because you just have a little bit more credibility. And there are a lot of kind of unqualified people who apply through the normal LinkedIn or whatever system they have to accept applicants. A lot of people just aren't qualified, and most recruiters aren't honestly qualified to tell if people are qualified or not. So I think getting through that wall is a challenge, and it becomes a little bit of a numbers game. So if you know somebody somewhere, you can definitely sidestep that process a little bit, and that helps. And I really should have done a better job of doing it, but I think it's such a stressful process. I didn't think enough about it, if that makes sense.
No, I think that that definitely makes sense. And as someone who has, I've worked a few different jobs in my life, and honestly, all of the jobs that I actually liked came from knowing someone that worked there, and all the jobs that I was like, I need to get out of here, as soon as possible. Those came from jobs that I didn't know anyone, and I just like threw my hat in and put in an application and got accepted. Those were the jobs that I didn't like. Whereas the person that when someone that's there, they can tell you about, like, if you know them, a little bit of the work culture, you know a little bit about what is liked and not liked at the job. You can kind of have a gauge an idea based on what you know about the person. But, you know, for you, like you said, you know, you did reach out to people that you knew, and there was still a lot of nothing. So, I mean, like, what is it that companies can start doing better, I guess?
Well, I think the first thing that companies can do better is to make sure that their recruiters, whether they're internal or external, are giving all the applicants a good experience. In my opinion, it's rude not to basically respond to every applicant, even if it's just to say, hey, you know, we're looking for somebody who has Objective C experience. We don't see that in your resume, so you know you're not a good fit. You know, we'll keep you on our files or whatever for future applications, et cetera, et cetera. It's amazing they don't do that. So many companies don't do that. Some companies will do that if you get to a certain point in the interview process. For instance, I knew I've kind of fallen out of touch, but I knew a recruiter at Google, and I interviewed at Google years ago for an iOS position, and you know I didn't get past the phone screen, but the recruiter was like, "Hey, you know, most people don't get into Google the first try. Don't worry about it. You know, apply again if you see another opening that looks good to you. You know, apply again in a year. We'd still love to have you. You know, just try again." And I thought that was awesome. That's a great way to treat people, not like, you know, they're defective or not worthy of a response. It was really great.
You know, I like what you said there. It's not like people are defective. You know, I think that that's something that when you are in the thick of trying to find a job, especially when there is a situation that's like, I need to do this and I need to do this soon because it is causing a strain. Like, you know, kind of like you said in your situation, you thought everything was going great, but, you know, your boss made it clear, like, okay, you're going to either have to stay in Austin or you're going to need to find new work. And that kind of puts a timer on things. And I can only imagine what you know is going on in your mind, but let alone when you have someone who is, you know, a newlywed or someone who was laid off from a previous position, and they, just because you get laid off doesn't mean that all of your responsibilities get laid off as well. Like, you have to pay
That's
bills.
right.
So I can only imagine how when people apply to a position and they hear nothing back, it it is hard. It is really hard. And as a business owner as well, like, part of how my business continues to make money is we have to go out and we have to pitch to people. We have to grow, you know, gain leads, and we have to, you know, follow up on those things. And I would rather have 1,000 people tell me no than have 1,000 people just not tell me anything, because that doesn't help me at all.
That's that's absolutely right. I don't know, it's dehumanizing not to get a response when you know, you're reaching out to make a connection to some company and you get nothing, or you get a form letter back. It just feels like they they don't care about you. Um, it's really odd. It's like you're walking down the street and you say hello to somebody, and they just walk past you without acknowledging you.
You know, one of the things that I think that companies also do, and I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, don't just say I'm sorry, but at the time, like, you're lacking something. Like, be specific. I mean, and even if it's a matter of saying, look, we had 3,000 people apply for this position and we had to choose one, so this is what we specifically looked for, and you fell outside the parameters. I can do a lot more with that than I can do with, I'm sorry, but at this moment we're looking at going in a different direction. Like, that's, you know, at least let me know, because that's the thing that I see recruiters when they create these job opportunities. Like, when you go to their website, it sounds like I mean, it literally looks like someone just threw a bunch of buzzwords into, like, a shotgun shell, and then just like shot at the wall, and then whatever was still there, like they just threw into a bunch of sentences. You're like,
Oh, yes. That's, so let's go back to one thing you said earlier about the we're changing, what is it, changing directions or
yeah,
yeah. God, that drives me nuts because I think one thing a lot of companies do is they don't know actually what skills they want to hire for. And so they put out some job description that, has just some stuff, the arbitrary stuff. They thought, this is probably what we want. But then really there's some hidden criteria that they haven't laid out. And if they just put that in there, they could have basically saved everybody a lot of time. It's like, oh, we want an iOS developer, but then you actually interview with them and you talk to them, and it's like, oh, we want somebody who has advanced OpenGL skills or whatever, metal skills, I guess, is the more modern thing. So that drives me crazy because I think a lot of cases they just didn't think through what they actually needed and they didn't write it down, so everybody's time is wasted. And then going back to your gobbledygook on their website for the career thing, that drives me nuts too, because people who are looking for a job, they really don't care if you're doing advanced machine learning, blockchain, whatever's like they don't need 12 paragraphs about that. They want to know, why would I enjoy working here? Is it a fit for my skills? How are you different from other companies? Those are the key things you want to know. You don't really need I'm not buying your product. I'm signing up for a career here. So yes, I want to know about what you do, but I can figure that out on your marketing pages. For the job, I need to know why you're different from Google or Microsoft or any of these other companies out there.
so I love what you just said there. Like, I'm not I'm not buying your product. I'm trying to like advance my career here. I think that is something that companies like the tech industry were bad about, that because it's easy to think that like a Twitter or a Google or Apple, like, yeah, we probably buy their products. Like we know what I bought a Google product, and tomorrow I'll probably have to buy an Apple product. Like, literally, these things actually did happen today, and I purchased one of them on Amazon. So, like, yes, I am consuming their product, but not every company is like that. I am not in the market to buy a mouthpiece that tracks, any type of head trauma anytime soon. Like, I don't play hockey. I don't play football. Like, maybe when the music is too loud and I'm headbanging or something, maybe, but like, I just can't find a good reason for me to be in that market. But at the same time, the company itself sounds phenomenal. Like, it sounds like an absolute wonderful place to work. They're working on a project that, although it doesn't impact me directly, I want to see succeed because I've seen what happens to people who are, victims of CTE, and I've seen what CTE can do to people, up to the point that literally they can wind up killing themselves or hurting others. And I think it's an important thing, and I would love to help progress that. But at the same time, I'm not buying that product. So you have to convince me, like, why is it that I want to work for this company? Why is it that I want to be a member of this team? And I think that more companies, one of the best companies that I have ever applied to, I think I've applied twice and I didn't get hired either time, was Buffer. And Buffer does for those that don't know, Buffer does like social media management. Like, you can control when and where you send tweets and Facebook posts and things like that. And the reason why it was important to me that like I at least apply, like I applied for a job that I was overqualified for. And I applied not because of the job or the role, but because of their company policy, their company culture, their thoughts on remote work, which was something that was important to me, and how the team itself carries itself in the public and to the public eye? Like, how is the company viewed? Everybody that I've ever talked to from the company has, it's always been a very positive experience. And I was willing to take a pay cut. I was willing to relocate. I was willing, I knew I could climb up into like the position that I wanted to be in. I just wanted to get my foot in the door. And I think by telling that story, companies have a better chance of finding people who are not only qualified, but actually fit their company culture and actually will work not just in the present, but they will work long into the future for that company.
Yeah, what you just said nailed it. I think that just nails it because people, when they're talking about recruiting and hiring people, they tend to not think about the fact that the public presence for a company has a huge impact on whether people want to work there or not. Um, I mean, there's like you, there's probably a handful of companies that if that company said, "Hey, John, we want you to interview here," I would probably drop everything and like be like, "Well, what the heck?" Like, I know people there. I've heard people from there speak. I kind of know their what they stand for. Heck yeah, I'm going to interview there no matter what else is happening in my life. I'll probably go out of my way to interview there. Like, if someplace like Pixar wanted to hire me, yeah, I'm going to interview at Pixar because that's an amazing company with amazing product. And I read Creativity Inc. and I thought that was an incredible book. Like, wow, what a cool company. I would definitely drop everything because they have this amazing public image. They share things kind of about the internal workings of their company. So you feel like you know what you're going to kind of get from the experience working there. But so many other places, well, it's just back to the same marketing they give to their customers, which may not resonate with employees unless they're actually using the product.
One of the things that you did mention that I really liked about that too is, you said they actually promoted themselves in the company like light in the company picture. They show what it's like to be a member of the team. That is something that I think companies like, I don't know if they just stopped doing or what, but there was this big like mystery around what happened at Apple. Like everything in Apple was like behind this gigantic like steel wall. And I keep bringing up Apple. I don't know why. It's probably because I'm recording on with a bunch of Apple products right now. Sorry, but the idea of like I couldn't tell you whether or not I wanted to work at Apple or not. Honestly, from what I've heard, I have no desire to work at Apple. There's like you can't blog, like you can't. There's a lot of stuff that you are just not allowed to do as an employee for Apple, and it's all because of a level of secrecy within the company. Now that has lightened a little bit in the last few years, but it's still a very present thing. And I think that to be considered, I mean, obviously everybody would love the idea of like, oh yeah, I work for Apple, I get a discount on everything. That would be super awesome. But more than anything, like you want your people talking about how awesome your company is. Like you want people like my my little business that it is, like it is myself, my wife, and our first partner in the UK. And it was funny because I was already tweeting about like, our company has an unlimited time off policy. We're a results driven business, not a time driven business. So whether you work 2 hours a day or 10 hours a day, we have set goals that we want to accomplish. And if you accomplish those goals, we don't care how long it takes. And people were like, "Oh wow, that's awesome, that's amazing." Now, granted, we're also kind of a startup, and we're very very lean, so we're able to do that. Everybody is at the founder level, which means you don't get a paycheck; you're just trying to make money. But at the same time, it's important that we set those policies now, so that in the future we can still live by those policies. We can't say like, we want everybody here at 9 a.m. and you have to be gone by 5. No, like that's horrible. Like We want you to come in, do the job that you are getting paid to do, no matter how long it takes you to do it. And if you choose to do more, then absolutely awesome. Now, if we feel like you have the ability to do more, then you should be rewarded for doing more. And we should be paid more for doing more. And these are all beliefs that I have. And as a business owner, I have the ability to enforce those beliefs, but no one's going to know about J&J Media if, just off of our SEO. I mean, I can tell you now our SEO is garbage, but that's just because we're just starting. Like, we just got the website up. So it's a very understandable thing, but starting from day one, doing the right things, saying the things that you mean, showing what your culture looks like, doing all of that from day one. That way it doesn't have to be hard to find employees.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. If you actually want to, well, if you want to have any culture, you basically need to start defining that with your very first hire. Because if you just do the default, you're just going to end up with something that's arbitrary. You're not going to be in control of that culture. So yeah, I agree with that completely. And the bonus is, as you communicate these things to the external world, you'll get feedback, maybe you'll have debates, but people actually know who you are as an employer and what you want, and that you actually care about, your employees' experience, which there's so many companies that really don't care at all about their employees' experience. They just, kind of emulate other companies and, say it's wonderful and great and dynamic and agile and all these words that are kind of hollow.
If a company puts agile in its like top level factors, then just don't just don't hire. Just go to the next company. Because I think if a company tells me like we're a lean agile, company that's focused on synergy and like no, I'm out. Sorry. But you get that though, like it happens so much. And then this isn't designed to be a roast on companies. It's designed to be like critical feedback of, you see like a careers page, and on the careers page it's always like a company photo, like a company portrait of everyone, in front of their building, and then some people playing ping pong. And it's like, as fun as that looks, I'm sure that happens once a year at the company picnic. Like, there's not a weekly ping pong tournament. And I mean, it's like these things, I want to see what the day-to-day looks like. And honestly, every interview that I've sat in on, when they ask, they'll ask you, they're like, do you have any questions for us? And I say, yes, I do. I have a ton of questions for you. And I look at the person at the lowest level, because normally they'll have the like, not the executive level, but like the manager's manager, who your person would be, and then maybe one of a colleague or someone at the equal level of where you're working. And always go to the person at the lowest level and say, what, if you could describe what your day-to-day is, what does your day look like? What are you doing? What tools are you using? Because I want to know what it's going to be like from the day-to-day level, not from the, as the president of the company, we make sure that all of our employees are happy. No, of course you want to say that, but if the person that's sitting there next to you, that's going to be your colleague, the person that you're going to rely on a day-to-day, if they can't accurately and honestly tell you, my cat decided to jump up on the table. Hey, can you move? Can you move, please? Can you?
No, I'm a cat. I can't move. I'm here with a purpose.
Well, just either stand still or do. You're fine. But yeah, like if that person can't tell me like what their day to day is because of the people that are around them, that's already a red flag. Like if I feel like they have to lie about what their day to day is because of their boss sitting right next to them, like, that is a company that I don't want to work for.
Yeah, that is definitely, that's a big red flag. Because one, it shows that the day-to-day experience is probably not great, and two, there's kind of a messed up power dynamic here where you get in trouble if you say something critical in front of your boss. And that's not a comfortable place to work, in my opinion. Um, your mileage may vary. But yeah, to what you said, I believe very strongly that the most important factors for your enjoyment of a job are one, who is your manager? So if you're interviewing for a job, you better be sure to interview your manager. Ask them serious questions, just like you said. What is the day to day like? How much time am I going to spend in meetings? That's a critical one for me because I don't want to spend 8 hours a week in meetings. That's crazy. 20% of my week is going to go into meetings. No way. I don't want to work there. Unless you have very fun meetings. Another thing I want to know is, I'm an iOS developer. I want to know, do you send people on your team to WWDC, the Worldwide Developers Conference, or not? And, if they don't, then I'm going to kind of question, what kind of career path you could possibly have at this company that won't send you to basically the developer conference for, your career, your profession. So yeah, it's definitely absolutely critical to figure out who your manager is. And like you said, ask the other employees. Oftentimes in your interview process, you'll be alone with somebody who might be your future colleague. So that's a good person to ask. How do you like your manager? And you just, I recommend that you use some negotiation techniques and you ask a question and you just shut your mouth and give the guy plenty of time to answer, to get, try to learn as much as you can about the boss. And like you said, ask them about tools. Are they going to buy me licenses to Sketch or whatever tool I need to do my job? How many hours am I spending? You need to ask all these questions, things that are important to you. So you have to know kind of what is important to you. But yeah, you're interviewing the company you're working for.
And I think that that's something that people tend to forget, that an interview goes both ways. And you really are interviewing, the company as well, because if the company is not willing to invest in its employees, the company will lose its employees. And that happens a lot. Hey, what happened to the last guy that had this position? Now they may not be able to divulge a lot of the stuff, but would you say, hey, did they move into a management position? Did they go somewhere else? I can tell you now, like the last IT job that I held, I took the job from someone who got a job as a manager up in Silicon Valley. So it was like, hey, this position's been empty for some time. Okay, why was it empty for so long? Why didn't you hire internally? Is there an option to promote internally? Is that a big thing that happens here? And it's not necessarily, you want to do it tactfully. You don't want to do it like you're, in your mind you've already made up, like, I don't want to work here. But at the same time, you need to ask some of the difficult questions. And the way that I see it, I want to hire someone on my team that is going to ask me difficult questions. I want to hire someone on my team that isn't afraid to let me know that, hey, they don't like this idea. Certain things they don't like and certain things they don't agree with. Like, I think that is more powerful than having someone on your team who is what we would call a yes man. Someone who just says, oh yeah, sure, absolutely. I'll do that thing. Like, no, if it's a bad idea, tell me it's a bad idea. I might say do it anyway because I'm the boss, but then we have another issue. But at the same time, I would rather you tell me that it's a bad idea and here's why than to tell me, yes, sir, and then start doing it. And then when it was a bad idea, come back and go, oh, well, I kind of knew that this was going to happen. Well, then why didn't you say something, dummy? Not to be mean about it, but the idea of not being vocal. So many people get angry about the company that they work for because of things that the company does. But just like you would tell someone that you're dating, if they do something that you don't like, you tell them, hey, I don't like that thing that you're doing. Because if you don't tell them, they don't know that they're doing it. So if you at least bring it up, then you have an opportunity to correct. And again, that might be an unpopular opinion, but that's the opinion that I have. And I mean, it's worked out for me.
That's right. there's of course a small risk that if you kind of challenge somebody who's interviewing you, that they won't like it and they won't want to hire you. There's always that risk. But we're professionals. We're both professionals, allegedly. And yeah, I mean, you should be allowed to challenge each other and ask questions that are pertinent to your profession and career. It's really critically important that unless you're happy being entirely passive at work, it's important to make sure that your boss, your future boss, will respect your boundaries and be willing to listen to your feedback. Because if not, it's probably not going to work out for you anyhow. Now, of course, you might really, really need a job, and that's fine too. We all understand that. But I do think that it's a sign that you're a competent professional when you're at an interview and you kind of ask the person interviewing you some tough questions. I think when I'm interviewing somebody and they ask me tough questions, I always try to answer as honestly as I can, and I respect them more for it because it shows that they have real experience in a job and they've kind of seen what works and what doesn't work for them. I think it's really great for them to kind of know the unvarnished truth about the job, so they can make a good decision. And if they do come to work with me, that they'll like it and they'll stick around for the long term, hopefully, because they knew what they're getting into.
I absolutely love that, and that's a good point to start wrapping it up on. So before we jump into the after show, which by the way, if you're not everyone listening, if you are not a member of the after show crew, that means you're not getting the after show where we're gonna turn the tables and John's gonna ask me some questions. I would highly suggest you do that, and you can do that one of a few ways, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. So stay tuned. But John, before we wrap up, if there was one piece of advice that you could give to someone who had an interview tomorrow, someone that's interviewing for a tech position tomorrow, what would that piece of advice be?
Well, that's the one thing that's tough to nail down, but I'll say that probably the number one thing is basically what we've just been discussing: is be sure to have a list of good questions that you're able to ask the people interviewing you. Like, maybe even rehearse those questions. And they don't have to be super sophisticated, but you should definitely have them. It's really sad, but a lot of times you'll run into basically an incompetent interviewer who will go through your resume and ask you like 5 minutes worth of questions for an hour slot. And so you just sit there awkwardly staring at each other, unless you have some questions or something to have a discussion with them about. And I think it's really important that in any tech interview, any kind of interview, that with everybody you talk to, you try to have a discussion that is a little bit outside of the interview zone, if that makes sense. You want to try to make a little bit more of a connection with them. So, if they ask you a difficult technical question, answer the question, but, maybe after you answer it, you ask them a little bit how they would approach it, or ask them, oh, well, what do you think about this kind of approach versus this kind of approach? Sometimes I even do that in the middle of answering the question. It's like, well, I could do this two different ways. Do you think it's more important to, for instance, have speed of execution for this problem, or do you think it's more important to have clarity and readability in the code? Are you at all concerned about stability, etc.? So I think I really encourage everybody to try to make a little bit more of a connection in the tech interview, and keep it professional, but have something to talk about that's not just whatever list of questions that they're bringing along.
I love that, John. If people want to reach out to you, how can they do that?
So probably the best way is to contact me on Twitter. My personal handle is Wind Addict, as in addicted to wind. And if you're interested at all in iOS careers, then you can follow me at Hire an App Dev on Twitter.
Hey, I hope you liked the conversation that I had with John. And if you did, like I said, if we missed something, let me know over on Twitter at prod_in_tech. And if you liked it, here's the thing. If you reach out to someone and say, hey, this is a great episode, you should totally check it out, that is helping us. If you leave us a review on iTunes and tell us about it and say, hey, this is a great show, you should totally check out episode with John, he did great, that is helping us. If you decide that you do want to give us a couple of dollars and you go to our Ko-Fi page, that is ko-fi.com/JNJ Media, you're not only helping us, but you're helping all of the other podcasts on the J&J Media Network. That is Ask a Brit, the .NET Core Show, Devataku, Waffling Taylor, so many shows that all rely on you, the listener, getting the word out and telling others about it. So there's going to be a link in the show notes that says click here to contribute. It's going to take you to that Ko-Fi page. But again, if you don't want to give $1, I understand because times are tough. But we would definitely love it if you at least tell a friend of yours to check out the show and take them to the website, share the page, and show us that you did that, and we will give you access to the after show. What is the after show, you say? Well, that is where my friend John interviews me, and if you didn't know, John has a great track record in iOS development. He actually worked on a lot of really cool productivity apps in the past, and we dig into that. And we also talk a little bit about the new company, Productivity and Tech as a whole, and how we are helping one another. But in order to do that, like I said, you got to share it. You got to tell us that you shared it, and then we will reach out to you and get that information to you. And if we don't, you can have full permission to come and yell at us on Twitter at prod_in_tech, and we will do the right thing by you. Thank you to Nadir Omawale for the use of his song, A Hustler, in spite of myself for the intro and outro music. And of course, I have been your host, Jay Miller. And for the Productivity in Tech podcast, I hope we have been productive. Until next week, I'll talk to you later.